They laughed when I packed my bags, but had no idea where I was going. Madison shifted her worn blue duffel bag from one shoulder to the other in the cramped break room at Lester's grocery. The place smelled of stale coffee and cleaning spray, punctuated by the clatter of carts and chatter from the busy store floor just beyond the doorway. She took a deep breath, heart hammering, then cleared her throat. "I put in my 2 weeks' notice," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm leaving Lester's." A few heads turned. Brielle snorted. "You? Leaving? Where would you even go?" Sienna smirked from across the table, phone half out to capture the moment. Dennis, the shift supervisor with his thick smirk and ever-present sarcasm, let out a loud chuckle. He leaned in, voice carrying easily in the small room. "Back to your parents' couch already? Or just chasing another pipe dream, Madison?" The laughter spread. Madison tightened her grip on the strap of her bag, suddenly aware of how exposed she felt in the spotlight. Her hand jerked as she reached down to pick up her battered journal, but the corner caught on the edge of the table and the book spilled open onto the scuffed linoleum floor. Pages fluttered like oversized white leaves. Dennis crouched quickly, smirking as he picked up the journal, flipping it open to reveal lists scrawled in neat, hopeful handwriting. Poetry submission deadlines, networking contacts, affordable housing options. He whispered just loud enough. "Still got those lists, huh?" His grin suggested he didn't take her ambitions seriously. What no one noticed was the thick, official-looking envelope tucked halfway beneath the notes, embossed with the seal of a renowned university's writing program. Madison's breath hitched as the brief moment of humiliation clashed with a simmering resolve she buried deep inside her chest. The lunch bell buzzed overhead, its shrill ring slicing through the laughter. Madison tucked the journal back into her duffel and slung it over her shoulder, feeling the familiar weight settle against her side, a small comfort amid the noise. She forced herself to meet Dennis's gaze for a brief second, unyielding, before stepping back into the hum of the store. Outside, the sun caught the faded blue of her jacket, casting a muted glow on her determined expression. Some were already betting she wouldn't last a week away from Lester's, but Madison clutched the worn fabric of that duffel, holding a quiet secret, one no one there was ready to see yet. By midday, Madison's resignation had wound through Lester's grocery like a stubborn draft, unseen but impossible to ignore. Whispers blurred into pointed jokes that stacked up heavier as the afternoon rush swelled. Brielle and Sienna, barely out of their teens, whispered in voices just loud enough to catch Madison's ears while filming her on a shaky phone camera. Their fake tears and exaggerated farewells echoed through the break room, twisting the truth into a public spectacle. Madison forced a polite smile, but felt every second scrape against her skin like thorns. At the front register, Mrs. Hedman, a regular who once bought groceries in silence, offered a sly remark in a low voice as Madison scanned her items. "Don't forget to write when you're famous." The words fell like dry leaves, mocking yet oddly hopeful. Madison stared down at the counter, the beeping of the scanner suddenly harsh and unforgiving. Later, she caught the brief gleam of triumph in Dennis's eyes from across the store, his smirk sharper and more confident than usual. The sting deepened when someone deliberately slid the sign-up sheet for the upcoming staff dinner under a stack of boxes and forgotten flyers, just out of Marie's reach, who usually organized these things. Madison's name was missing, gone like an afterthought. It was a quiet exclusion, but one that bit harder than any loud joke. She caught Lester's gaze, a man in his 60s with gray hair and soft eyes behind rimmed glasses, and saw a flicker of understanding there. When Madison approached hesitantly, Lester culled a peppermint from his jar and held it out without a word. "So, is it really goodbye this time?" he asked gently, folding his hands over the weathered counter. Madison nodded, the corners of her mouth twitching with the ghost of a smile. It was the kind of quiet support that mattered far more than a crowd's applause. Lester's subtle kindness drew a breath inside her aching chest, a brief, necessary pause from the growing storm around her. Word had reached some ears that a county job fair was happening in just 2 days. Rumor whispered that Dennis was angling to snag the management spot, Lester had promised to someone years ago. That raised the stakes, sending a ripple of tension through the staff. Madison knew it wasn't just about her leaving anymore. It was about one more chance to prove that what she carried in her duffel, dreams, at last, was more than just a joke. In the quiet moments between customers, Madison glanced down at the worn leather strap of her bag. Everyone had their opinion about what she should do next. But for Ho, the road lay somewhere beyond these fluorescent lights, far from the laughter and the whispered doubts. If a moment like this ever hit close to home, I'd love to hear how you found your way forward. That evening, after the grocery store's fluorescent hum fell behind her, Madison sat on the sagging bench at the bus station. Her hands traced the worn edges of the blue duffel bag, the fabric threadbare where years of scraping against counters and pavement had taken their toll. She scrolled through her email one last time on her cracked phone screen. No replies, just the steady tick of an empty inbox. Her fingers hovered over the booking app, a cheap bus ticket to Providence blinking invitingly, but barely within reach of her dwindling savings. The numbers stared back like an unread challenge. This was the plan. Move to a city with more opportunities, attend that exclusive writer's workshop she'd applied to months ago, and finally turn those scribbled words in her battered journal into something real. But months of silence had dulled her hope. The emptiness of the screen echoed the self-doubt lurking deep inside her. For a moment, she seriously considered repacking her bags and staying, safe in the known, even if it was a tiny grocery store and quiet burn of stifled dreams. Her heart lurched when her phone buzzed suddenly, a missed voicemail flashing on the screen. She pressed play, the voice clipped and efficient. "This is Julia Mendez from the Providence Writers Workshop. We believe your mailed application might have been misplaced. Please contact us as soon as possible." That single message shifted the air around her, painting a sharp, tangible path through the fog of uncertainty. Madison exhaled deeply, fingers trembling, as she dialed back the number printed on the screen, the lines crackling with polite urgency. She scribbled down the extension Julia gave her, a lifeline threading through impossible silence. This wasn't a vague dream anymore. This was concrete. A missed letter, a real human on the other end, it all added up. Still, the pit of nerves nested in her stomach posed a thorny hurdle. Could she actually afford the ticket? Would the workshop still have space if she missed the deadline? Her scarf wrapped tightly around her neck did little to warm the chill setting deep inside her. But the glimmer of hope, that someone, somewhere, had noticed her, was enough to keep her fingers dialing, keep her eyes scanning travel sites, keep her packing possibilities. In the quiet hours before dawn, Madison scribbled a list of next steps in the margins of her journal. Confirm acceptance, book ticket, pack essentials. Each word etched with urgency and quiet faith. The night sky deepened outside the station windows, vast and full of promises waiting beyond the dim platform lights. Even as shadows stretched across her worn blue duffel, Madison's resolve sharpened with every breath. This wasn't just a chance to escape, it was her moment to finally arrive. The walk-in cooler door slammed behind Madison with a sharp clang that echoed down the narrow aisle. Frost bit through the thin jacket she usually wore, but this cold settled deeper, inside her chest, numbing and unyielding. Dennis's voice was low but loaded with venom, sharp enough to cut through the cold. "Heard you've been trying to trade a cash register for some fancy writer's workshop," he sneered. "Looks like all those applications of yours? Total flop." His eyes darted around, making sure others on the floor caught the warning. "Don't expect any goodbye party. You're out of here, and no one's gonna miss you." The chill wasn't just from the cooler's hum. It crept into her bones. Madison swallowed hard, aching to disappear beneath the racks, stacked high with frozen vegetables and tans. The hum of a compressor was the only sound other than her shallow brats. Dennis's smirk vanished for a fraction of a second. The usual cocky facade flickered with something else. Was it doubt? Or maybe a pinch of guilt? When Dennis finally pushed past her and closed the door, the cold slipped in like a shadow, making her shiver. Alone, Madison leaned against the metal wall, the frost seeping into her skin. Her fingers reached down, pulling out the battered journal from her bag, familiar by its worn corners and soft smell of old paper. She flipped past the lists and notes, landing on the thick envelope she hadn't touched in more than a week. The postmark caught her eye, the neat official handwriting from the Providence Writers' Workshop. It had slipped under her radar, amidst the relentless pace of work and sneers. Her breath hitched as trembling hands tore the envelope open, careful not to crease the fragile paper inside. The ink was crisp. The letter headed with a simple phrase that made her heart pound louder than the freezer's drone. "Congratulations, you have been accepted." A wave of warmth suddenly flooded through the cold that had gripped her moments before. The sting of Dennis's words faded, replaced by a fragile hope knitting itself firmly inside her chest. Madison read the letter again, slower this time, letting every word sink in. The sentence was short, but it carried the weight of years of quiet determination. The shine of the letter in the pale freezer light was almost too bright, illuminating the cracks in her doubt. Here, finally, was a truth undeniable. They saw her, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to dream beyond the frozen walls trapping her name in whiskers. Outside, the hum of the store buzzed like distant thunder, and Madison caught her breath, steadying herself. This wasn't just a letter. It was a lifeline, a way out, a chance to rewrite the story people had already started without her. Tomorrow's challenges suddenly seemed a little less impossible. If a moment like this ever hit close to home, I'd love to hear how you found your way forward. Madison's footsteps echoed through the nearly empty aisles as she searched for Lester. The old grocery store felt unusually quiet on her last night, almost waiting, breath held between the fluorescent flickers overhead. She found Lester behind the counter, meticulously arranging the peppermint jar he kept for the regulars and those who needed a small kindness. His eyes lifted, catching hers with an understanding that didn't require words. "I need a favor," Madison said, voice low but steady. "I have to send my acceptance letter back to the Providence Workshop by tomorrow morning. It's a final deadline." She pulled out the crisp envelope, still folded carefully. "I don't have a printer at home, and I'm worried if I miss this window, the chance will slip away." Lester studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "You still have access to the office resources today," he said quietly. "There's a policy. Employees can use the computer and printer through their last shift. I'm letting you use it, but you have to be quick." Together, they hurried to the small back office, the hum of the refrigerated aisles fading behind the thick door. Madison set the letter on the cluttered desk, careful not to crease it, while Lester fired up the dusty computer. The old printer wheezed awake under their commands, lights blinking like an uncertain heartbeat. Madison scanned the acceptance letter, her hands trembling as the file swallowed itself into the screen. Lester looked over the print queue, then nodded approvingly. "Everything's ready to go. But just so you know, if it doesn't send by midnight, they'll assume you declined." The clock on the wall ticked toward 9 p.m. Time was slipping fast. Her throat tightened with the weight of it all. This was more than a letter. It was her doorway out, the proof of years tucked into stolen moments, nights spent writing after shifts, and every doubting look she'd endured. If technology failed, so would her chance. Lester offered a small, steady hand on her shoulder, then glanced toward the front where Dennis was supervising. Madison caught Dennis's eyes. A flicker of something uneasy crossed his face, but he quickly masked it with indifference. Maybe for the first time, Dennis realized Madison's fight wasn't just a naive dream. Breathing in the strange mix of hope and tension, Madison focused on the screen, fingers poised to hit send. Whatever happened next, she wasn't giving up now. This was her chance, fragile but real. "If a moment like this ever hit close to home, I'd love to hear how you found your way forward." The back office was cramped and dim, a cluttered nook away from the buzz of Lester's grocery. The soft whir of the computer was the loudest sound as Lester fiddled with the keyboard, muttering about the stubborn printer. Madison stood close, heart pounding unevenly with a mix of hope and nerves. Time was slipping close to midnight, the final hour she had to confirm her spot at the prestigious Writers' Workshop in Providence. Minutes felt like hours. and every beat from the ancient printer made her flinch. "It's jammed again," Lester said, frustration creasing his weathered face. "I don't know if I can fix this in time." Madison's fingers clenched the worn edge of her jacket. Then Lester pulled out his phone and made a quick call, speaking into it with a low tone that carried urgency, yet quiet enough to keep suspicion at bay. "Andy's on his way," Lester said, "Nephew's IT guy. If anyone can untangle this mess, it's him." When Andy arrived, he stepped inside, carrying a small backpack and a calm confidence that contrasted the tension thickening the air. He plugged in his laptop and immediately began scanning lines of code, fingers flying over keys in a steady rhythm. Madison felt her breath catch, eyes fixed on the glowing screen as the clock on the wall ticked toward 11:54 p.m. Outside the small room, the faint murmur of the closing store was a distant hum. Inside, time felt suspended. Madison's stomach tightened, every second pulsed with the possibility of losing everything she'd fought for. Then, a soft chime echoed, confirmation. Her acceptance and reply had been sent. The quiet that followed was almost sacred. Lester looked up with a small smile, his usual stoic demeanor softened. "You did it," he said quietly. At that moment, footsteps approached outside. The door cracked open slightly. Dennis paused in the threshold, hesitation flickering in his eyes before he pulled the door wider. His typical smirk was gone, replaced by an uncertain glance that lingered on Madison, as if seeing her for the first time. Without a word, Dennis turned and left, closing the door gently behind him. The atmosphere shifted, the power balance subtly tilting. Madison exhaled, her heart pounding strong. No longer just a dreamer in an ill-fitting jacket, but a woman with a future firmly within reach. When dignity finally speaks, who tends to listen in your world? The next morning's county job fair buzzed with chatter and crisp pamphlets, but Lester's grocery staff spoke in hushed tones with something different, excitement edged with disbelief. The rumor wasn't about Dennis's push for management anymore. It was about Madison, the quiet cashier who had finally found a way out of the small town's invisible walls. Behind the relay of passing conversations, Madison stepped across the crowded venue, carrying her reliable blue duffel and that battered journal patched with worn edges. She held it close, not just as a keepsake, but a symbol of every scribble, every hope, and every whispered doubt she ever mulled over. When she noticed Brielle and Sienna hovering nervously by the snack table, the two glanced away quickly, deleting the mocking goodbye video they'd posted the day before. Madison's eyes met theirs briefly. No malice in her gaze, only calm resolve. Then came the buzz from her phone, the official tweet from the Providence Writers' Workshop. Her name featured prominently, tagged as a new, highlighted fellow with promises of an upcoming reading series and mentorship. The flood of congratulations she hadn't imagined began rolling in, from old acquaintances, strangers, even a few customers. The quiet girl behind the register was now spotlighted for the world to see. Dennis appeared, hesitance written across his face. He hesitated a moment, then extended a stiff hand. "Congratulations, Madison," he muttered, almost swallowed by the noise. Lester's measured nod from across the room held weight, the unspoken acknowledgement that Madison's struggle, once invisible, had finally earned its place in the light. Later, back at the store, Lester carefully pinned Madison's framed photo on the new wall of success beside the cash registers. Customers lingered to look, asking questions, clapping her on the back when she returned from the fair. The shift dinner, long canceled for her, had flipped overnight. This time, it was a real celebration, thrown with warmth and genuine pride. Madison stood in the middle of the gathering, surrounded by those who once doubted her. Not a single word was needed. The weathered journal tucked beneath her arm whispered stories of persistence and quiet strength to anyone willing to listen. Here, her journey was no longer invisible. The place where she once packed bags in silence was now a launching point, a platform built on perseverance, humility, and kindness that even skeptics had to respect. Madison's smile stretched easy and full as she realized this was more than a goodbye. It was a recognition, the next chapter already unfolding before her. Has anyone ever judged you too soon? Tell me what changed their mind. Madison felt the worn wheels of her blue duffel hum softly over the cracked pavement as she stepped out of Lester's grocery for the very last time. The air was cool and crisp, the early morning sun casting long shadows that stretched across the parking lot like hopeful fingers reaching for something new. Her hand brushed the corner of the battered journal nestled inside her coat pocket, the same one that had held her dreams, her doubts, and the secret envelope all those months ago. The quiet around her was different now. Gone was the low murmur of snickers and cynical whispers. Instead, there was something lighter, softer, respect. Lester stood at the door, his usual silver hair catching the sunlight, his eyes crinkling with a gentle smile. He held the door open, a silent gesture of farewell and belief. No words were necessary. Madison paused, the familiar scent of rain still lingering in the air after a brief overnight drizzle. She glanced down at her hands, feeling the roughness of the journal's leather binding beneath her fingers. Sometimes people laugh at what they don't understand, she thought, voice quiet within her own mind. But it doesn't mean your dreams are foolish. The bus rumbled up to the curb, its engine a steady beat, signaling departure, possibility. She wheeled her duffel forward, the rhythm matching the steady rise of her heartbeat. Around her, the small town that had once doubted her whispered back, not with mockery, but with a quiet acknowledgement that something real had taken root. As she boarded, Madison looked back just once. Lester gave a slow nod, eyes shining with pride and hope. The door slid shut behind her, sealing in the past and opening wide the future. The laughter of others who doubted faded, replaced by the echo of her own steady determination. The road ahead was unknown, vast and waiting. And for the first time, Madison wasn't afraid. Her journey had started in a small grocery store break room, but would carry her far beyond, with resilience as her compass and kindness as her guide. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button. See you in our next story.